William gazed out the car window as the cityscape changed before him. The tall buildings and busy streets gradually gave way to narrow roads and modest houses. It felt strange to return after so many months away. His life had been consumed by business meetings, lavish parties, and dinners with wealthy investors, but none of that mattered now. There was something far more important waiting for him, or at least, he hoped so. His 7-year-old daughter, Sophia, was the reason he had come back. Thoughts of her had been growing stronger in his mind for months, filling him with guilt for not being there when she needed him most. During his painful separation from Patricia, he had thrown himself into work, using it as an escape. But no achievement could fill the emptiness in his heart, especially when he remembered Sophia's bright, curious eyes, always full of questions and wonder. When the car finally pulled up in front of Patricia's small house, William felt a knot form in his stomach. The contrast between this home and the life he could offer was stark. Taking a deep breath, he stepped out, walked up the porch steps, and rang the doorbell, hoping to hear Sophia's excited footsteps rushing to greet him. Instead, the door opened quietly, without the warmth he expected. The sight inside made his blood run cold. Sophia was kneeling on the floor, scrubbing it with an old rag. Tears streamed down her face, but she continued working in silence, her small shoulders trembling. She didn't dare look up. Meanwhile, Patricia and her husband, Anthony, sat comfortably on the couch, watching TV, completely indifferent to her suffering. William's voice came out lower than he expected, but the anger was unmistakable. "What is going on here?" Patricia glanced at him, looking more annoyed than surprised. "William, I didn't know you were coming today." Ignoring her, he stepped toward Sophia, whose hands moved faster as if hoping to disappear into the task. Kneeling beside her, he gently touched her shoulder. "Sweetheart," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Sophia hesitated, then slowly dropped the rag, unsure whether she should stop or keep going. William stood up abruptly, turning to Patricia, his expression hard. "Why is she cleaning the floor?" Patricia sighed, clearly irritated. "She does that sometimes. It's good for her to learn responsibility." Responsibility. William's hands clenched into fists. "She's 7 years old. She's crying, and you're sitting there watching TV like nothing's wrong." Anthony finally looked up from the screen, smirking. "Oh, please. Now you show up to act like the hero. A little late for that, don't you think? If you were around more, you'd know she's fine." William stepped closer, his fury barely contained. "I'm not here to argue with you. I'm here for my daughter, and clearly, something is very wrong." Patricia rolled her eyes. "You don't understand. We're going through a tough time. Sophia helps when she can. Don't make this bigger than it is. It's not like we're mistreating her. Helps when she can." William's voice was dangerously quiet. "She's crying, Patricia. Don't you see that?" Anthony scoffed. "Oh, come on. You just want to throw your money around and ease your guilty conscience. That's all this is. We're the ones actually raising her." William felt his hand tremble as he reached into his pocket, pulling out his phone. Without hesitation, he called Edward, his trusted lawyer. "Edward," he said, his voice firm, his eyes locked on Patricia and Anthony. "Start the emergency custody process for Sophia. This cannot continue." The room fell silent. Patricia's face drained of color. "Emergency custody," she whispered, her eyes wide. Anthony let out a short, forced laugh. "You're joking, right?" William's stare didn't waver. "No. This ends today." He knew the battle ahead would be tough, but looking at Sophia's tear-streaked face, he was ready to fight with everything he had. That night, as he drove back home with Sophia in the back seat, she remained quiet, staring out the window. The sadness in her eyes was a constant reminder of why he had to act fast. By morning, Edward had already prepared the necessary paperwork. The evidence was clear: neglect, emotional distress, and an unfit environment. The court filing was swift. When Patricia received the legal notice, she was in disbelief. The bailiff handed her the documents, and as she read, panic gripped her. "Sophia could be taken away from me," she whispered, her hands shaking. Anthony, barely looking up from the TV, shrugged. "What did you expect? After yesterday, he had to do something." Patricia turned to him, frantic. "Anthony, you provoked him. You said things you shouldn't have." Now he's actually going to take her away. Anthony chuckled darkly. Relax. He's just showing off. He'll get bored of this fight like he always does. Then it'll be over. But Patricia knew this wasn't about William's ego. This time, it was different. Days passed, and tensions escalated. Patricia tried to reach William, but he refused to budge. When she finally confronted him, she looked exhausted, her eyes swollen from crying. "William, please," she whispered, gripping his arm. "You can't do this. We're struggling." "Anthony, he shouldn't have said those things, but it's not always like that. You know that. The money you send is all we have. Without Sophia, I don't know what I'll do." William studied her for a moment. He could see her pain, but it didn't change the facts. "I send that money for Sophia, Patricia. Not for you and Anthony to live off. She's suffering, and you should have seen it long before I did." Patricia broke down, but William gently pulled away. He had no choice. He couldn't let Sophia stay in that environment any longer. Meanwhile, Anthony's true nature was surfacing. His attitude toward Patricia grew nastier, his words more venomous. "William doesn't care about Sophia. He just wants to win," he sneered. "He'll get bored, and then what? You'll have nothing." But deep down, Patricia knew William was fighting for their daughter, and guilt ate away at her. Weeks later, Edward called with news that made William exhale in relief. The court granted emergency custody. "Sophia stays with you while the case is evaluated." William knew the real battle was still ahead, but for now, Sophia was safe. As he watched her play in her new room, he saw a spark of happiness return to her eyes. The road ahead would be difficult, but he was ready to face whatever came next to ensure that his daughter grew up in a home filled with love and security, far from the indifference and neglect she had endured. Sophia wandered through the hallways, taking in her new surroundings with a lightness William hadn't seen in a long time. Watching his daughter play without fear or sadness in her eyes filled him with immense relief. He had managed to get her out of that toxic environment, and now she was safe in his home. But even though the worst seemed to be over, William knew this was only the beginning. There was still much to resolve, especially when it came to Patricia. Meanwhile, back in the house where Sophia had spent the last few months, the atmosphere was heavy. Patricia felt suffocated, her mind consumed by a whirlwind of emotions. The absence of Sophia left an overwhelming void, but the growing silence between her and Anthony was just as unbearable. Their nights were filled with arguments and accusations. Anthony, once merely indifferent, had grown aggressive. Patricia spent hours reflecting on her choices. When she had married Anthony, she believed he would bring stability and security after her turbulent divorce from William. But reality had proven far harsher. Anthony slowly revealed himself to be controlling and self-serving, caring more about the money William sent than Sophia's well-being. Every insult, every sarcastic remark chipped away at the confidence Patricia once had in her decisions. One particularly tense night, after yet another heated argument, something inside Patricia broke. Sitting at the edge of the bed, she watched Anthony drink on the couch, completely ignoring her presence. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered to herself. Anthony looked up, his eyes filled with disdain. "Do what? Wallow in self-pity because you lost custody of your daughter?" he sneered. "You knew this would happen. William always had the upper hand. Now he's playing the good guy, but in the end, he'll leave you with nothing." His words, cold and indifferent, were a wake-up call. Patricia suddenly saw the truth. Anthony had never cared about her or Sophia. His only concern was the money and status their marriage provided. Sophia had always been nothing more than an inconvenience to him, and Patricia had let that happen. Tears welled up in her eyes, but they were no longer tears of despair. They were tears of clarity, of decision. "I want you to leave my house, Anthony," she said, her voice low but firm. Anthony let out a mocking laugh. "You've got to be joking. I'm not going anywhere. Everything here is paid for with the alimony your ex-husband sends. And besides, where do you think you'll survive without me? You have nothing." But this time, Patricia didn't hesitate. Her voice grew stronger. "I will survive without you. I'd rather have nothing and keep my dignity. Now get out." Anthony, irritated by her defiance, tried to intimidate her, raising his voice and stepping closer. But Patricia didn't back down. For the first time in a long while, she felt in control of her life again. That night, Anthony packed his bags and left, slamming the door behind him. The sound echoed through the empty house, but instead of fear or regret, Patricia felt relief. She was finally free, and the days that followed, Patricia found herself alone, reflecting on her past decisions. With Sophia now living with William, she was forced to confront the weight of her mistakes. She had ignored so many signs, so many chances to be a better mother. But she knew she needed to change. And that change would start with admitting her failures. Determined, she sought out William. When she arrived at his house, she hesitated at the door before finally knocking. William opened it, his expression guarded, clearly surprised to see her. "William," she began, her voice uncertain. "I need to talk to you." He stepped aside, allowing her in. As Patricia walked through the living room, she noticed how warm and welcoming it felt. Sophia was playing in her room, unaware of her mother's arrival. That gave Patricia a moment of relief, but it also deepened her guilt. What she was about to say wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I wanted to apologize," she started, her words heavy. "I know I failed Sophia. I put my own needs and problems before her, and that should never have happened." She hesitated before adding, "I left Anthony. He never cared about our daughter, and I let that happen. I'm paying for it now, but I want to change. I just wanted you to know that." William remained stiff at first, but as he listened, his expression softened. He could see the regret in her eyes. As much as he still felt anger over what had happened, he also knew this wasn't easy for her. There was a sincerity in her words, something he hadn't seen in a long time. "Patricia, what happened isn't easy to forget," he finally said. "Sophia is the most important person in my life, and what she went through, it was painful to watch." Patricia nodded, tears slipping down her face. "I understand. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I just want you to know that I'm trying, for me, and especially for our daughter." William was silent for a moment, thinking. He saw the genuine pain on Patricia's face, and despite everything, something inside him told him she was truly remorseful. "I want you to have a chance to rebuild your relationship with Sophia," he said finally. "But it's going to take time." Relieved, Patricia wiped her tears. "Thank you, William. I'll do whatever it takes." A few days later, Patricia moved into a small apartment, far from the house she had shared with Anthony and closer to William's home. It was simple, but her heart felt lighter. She knew this was the start of something new. This time, she would do things differently. She would focus on rebuilding her bond with Sophia and proving she could be the mother her daughter deserved. She looked at the empty walls of her new home. A sense of hope bloomed inside her for the first time in years. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she was ready to walk it. The wind rustled the trees outside William's house, carrying with it a feeling of renewal. Watching from the window, he saw Sophia running through the garden, her laughter filling the air. Since she had moved in, she had become lighter, happier. William knew he had made the right choice. But beneath the relief, there was something else, an unease he didn't know how to resolve. Patricia had started visiting Sophia regularly. At first, William was hesitant. Despite seeing changes in Patricia, old wounds still lingered. But as the weeks passed, he observed her closely. She was different at first. Sophia was distant. The emotional gap between them was evident. But Patricia was patient. She didn't push. She showed up with small gestures, books, toys, gentle conversations about school. Slowly, the barrier between them began to dissolve. Sophia started to trust her again. Her laughter filled the house once more, and William, watching it all, felt a mix of relief and unease. As he observed Patricia's transformation, he couldn't ignore a lingering feeling. He remembered the woman he had fallen in love with years ago, before everything fell apart. The Patricia before him now was more mature, dedicated, trying to make amends. Yet something held him back, his own past, the mistakes he had made that had shattered their marriage. One Saturday, during a visit, William suggested they take Sophia to the park. As she ran ahead, playing among the trees, Patricia and William walked side by side in comfortable silence. "She seems so happy now," Patricia said softly, emotion thick in her voice. William nodded. "She's much better. That's what matters most." Patricia glanced at him, trying to read his expression. "William," she hesitated, "I just want to thank you for giving her what I couldn't at the time. I was lost, and you did what was right." William stayed quiet for a moment, processing her words. He knew Patricia was sincere, but that only stirred feelings he had tried to bury. The bond between Patricia and William continued to evolve as they spent more time together. At first, it was solely about Sophia, but as the days passed, their conversations grew deeper, uncovering emotions they had long buried. They found themselves reminiscing about the past, not just the painful moments but also the good times before their marriage crumbled. However, lingering between them was the wound that William had inflicted, a betrayal that had shattered everything. William had once strayed from their marriage, an affair born out of frustration and emotional distance. At the time, he convinced himself it was inevitable, that their relationship was already beyond repair. But the weight of that choice had never left him. One afternoon, after Patricia had finished playing with Sophia, she and William were left alone. She had noticed the tension growing between them and knew it was time to face it head-on. "William, we need to talk," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. He looked at her, already knowing where this was going. He braced himself but wasn't sure he was ready to face it. "I know you still carry a lot of guilt about what happened," Patricia continued. "And I don't want to keep pretending it never existed. Our marriage ended, and I take responsibility for my part in that. But I never really learned how to deal with what you did." Her words cut deep, but William knew they were true. There was no point in denying it any longer. "I cheated on you," he admitted, his voice thick with regret. "It was the worst mistake I could have made. I justified it at the time, telling myself that we were already broken, that it was just a consequence of our problems. But I know now, it was wrong. And it destroyed us." Patricia took a deep breath, processing his words. For a moment, silence filled the space between them. Then, she spoke again. "I forgave you, you know," she said softly. "It took time, but I realized that your betrayal wasn't the only thing that ended our marriage. We had been drifting apart long before that, and I didn't see it. What really hurt wasn't just what you did, but how we lost each other before that even happened." William hadn't expected that. He had always assumed that Patricia saw him only as the man who had betrayed her, but now he realized she had been hurting in ways he never acknowledged. "I distanced myself too," he admitted. "I let my work take over. I let resentment build up instead of trying to fix things when we still had a chance. I can't undo what I did, but I'm trying to be a better father for Sophia. In some way, I hope that makes up for some of the mistakes I made with you." Patricia nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "You're doing that, William. You're giving her what she needs. And that's what matters most now. I just wanted you to know that I don't hold on to anger anymore. I want us to move forward, for our daughter and for ourselves." Her words left William speechless. He had never realized how much he needed her forgiveness, and now that he had it, he wasn't sure how to process it. There was relief, but also uncertainty. What remained of their connection beyond co-parenting Sophia? Could they truly rebuild something new? The visits continued, and William noticed the growing ease between them. Their interactions were no longer just about Sophia. They began to talk more, to share more. Then one afternoon, as they sat together watching their daughter play, William made a decision. "What do you think about taking a trip?" he suggested. Patricia looked at him, caught off guard. "A trip?" "Yeah, just the three of us. Somewhere away from all the stress. I was thinking about the beach house. The one we used to go to when Sophia was little." A wave of emotions washed over Patricia. That house held some of their happiest memories, but it also reminded her of what they had lost. She hesitated, but deep down, she knew he was right. "I think it would be good," she finally said with a small smile. "Sophia will love it." A few days later, they arrived at the beach house. The familiar sound of the waves crashing against the shore brought a sense of nostalgia. Sophia ran along the sand, her laughter filling the air, while William and Patricia sat side by side, watching her. "It's good to be here again," Patricia said softly, her gaze fixed on the ocean. William nodded. "Yeah. But it also brings back a lot of memories." A quiet moment passed between them before Patricia finally spoke again. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened between us. And I realized I spent so much time blaming you that I never looked at my own mistakes. I let our marriage fall apart. I didn't see how much we were drifting apart until it was too late." William took a deep breath, her words hitting him harder than he expected. I made mistakes too. I lost myself in work, in resentment. And by the time I realized it, I had already done something unforgivable. But it was never about not loving you. I just didn't know how to fix what was broken." Patricia looked at him, surprised by his honesty. For the first time in years, they were truly talking, not just about the past, but about their feelings, their regrets, and what they had lost. As the sun set over the ocean, the two of them sat in silence, the weight of the past still present but no longer suffocating. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, it felt like they were moving forward, together. William rarely spoke about his feelings, especially when it came to the painful memories of their past. But now, sitting beside Patricia, he knew it was time to be honest. "I know," she said softly, a hint of warmth in her voice. "And I didn't know how to fight for our marriage either. I shut down emotionally, and that only made things worse." This time, the silence between them felt different. It wasn't filled with resentment or regret, but with understanding. They both knew the past couldn't be changed, but the future was still uncertain. Yet, here, away from the pressures of everyday life, there was something they hadn't allowed themselves to consider before, a chance to start over. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Patricia turned to William. The look they exchanged wasn't just nostalgic, it was real. A connection they had thought was lost was slowly resurfacing, and the following days, William and Patricia found themselves spending more time together. They explored the small coastal town, took long walks on the beach, and allowed their conversations to grow deeper. Sophia, carefree and happy, was the bond that kept bringing them closer, and they both took comfort in seeing their daughter so content. Slowly, the tension that had once defined their relationship gave way to something unexpected: closeness. Patricia started to see William not just as the man she once loved, but as someone who, like her, was trying to be better. One quiet evening, as Sophia slept, they sat on the porch, the gentle sound of the waves filling the silence between them. "I think I'm starting to imagine a different future for us," William said, his voice thoughtful. Patricia looked at him, surprised but not shocked. "I am too," she admitted, offering a small smile. "But I still wonder if we can really leave the past behind." William exhaled slowly. "The past will always be a part of us, but it doesn't have to define us. We can choose what comes next." The idea of a new beginning lingered between them, and for the first time, they were both willing to consider it. But just as things seemed to be falling into place, an unexpected obstacle arose. William received a message from Edward, his lawyer. "William, I need to inform you about an anonymous report filed with the Child Welfare Council. Someone is questioning Patricia's ability to be a mother and suggesting that Sophia's environment might not be safe." A chill ran down William's spine. Their trip to the beach house had been a turning point. Sophia was happier than ever, and he and Patricia were finally rebuilding something meaningful. But now, this anonymous report threatened to destroy it all. "What does this mean?" William asked, dreading the answer. "A social worker and an officer will visit tomorrow to assess the environment. If they find anything concerning, it could affect the entire custody arrangement." The news hit William like a punch to the gut. He knew Patricia had changed. He had seen firsthand how dedicated she was to creating a loving home for Sophia. But now, they would have to prove it. The next morning, Patricia already knew about the report. William had hesitated to tell her at first, worried she'd lose hope, or worse, suspect Anthony's involvement. But honesty was the only way forward. When Patricia heard, her face went pale for a moment before her determination took over. "I don't care who did this," she said firmly. "I know how hard I've worked to rebuild my relationship with Sophia. I won't let this take that away." Her resolve gave William strength. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but they would face it together. On the day of the visit, the house was spotless, not to impress, but to show the genuine effort Patricia had made to provide a stable home. William kept Sophia entertained in the backyard, shielding her from the tension that loomed inside. When the doorbell rang, Patricia took a deep breath and answered it. On the other side stood Agent Rose, a middle-aged woman with a professional demeanor, and Officer Ryan, whose presence, though formal, carried an air of authority. "Good morning, Ms. Patricia." "Mr. William," Rose greeted, stepping inside. "We're here to evaluate Sophia's living conditions based on the report we received." Patricia nodded, stepping aside to let them in, with William close behind. Rose observed everything carefully, moving through the house as Patricia and William explained how things had changed. They spoke about Patricia's progress, the stable environment they were creating, and their commitment to Sophia's happiness. Just then, Sophia ran into the room, smiling brightly as she hugged Patricia's waist. "Mommy!" Patricia knelt, holding her daughter tightly. "This is my daughter," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Everything I do is for her." Rose watched the scene closely. Sophia appeared happy and secure, and gradually, the social worker's expression softened. She saw sincerity, not just words, but actions that proved Patricia was a devoted mother. Even Officer Ryan, who had remained mostly silent, seemed to relax. This wasn't a household filled with neglect or dysfunction, it was a family trying to heal. After finishing her evaluation, Rose turned to Patricia and William. "The report we received raised concerns about Sophia's living conditions. However," she paused, looking at them with a gentler expression. "What I've seen today tells a different story. You are providing a safe, loving home. Your dedication to Sophia's well-being is clear." Patricia and William exhaled in relief, exchanging grateful looks. "Therefore," Rose continued, "my recommendation will be that Sophia remains in your custody. There's no reason to believe she is at risk here." Her words felt like a victory. What once seemed like a looming threat had turned into proof of how far they had come. Later that evening, the house was filled with an unfamiliar sense of peace. Patricia sat on the couch, exhausted but relieved, while Sophia played in the backyard. "We did it," she whispered, looking at William. "Yes, we did," he replied, smiling. William knew this journey had changed everything. The challenges they had faced, the honesty they had shared, and their effort to rebuild had led him to one undeniable truth. Patricia was, and always had been, the love of his life. It had taken losing everything to truly understand what mattered most. As he watched Sophia play, carefree and happy, something in his heart shifted. He turned to Patricia, the playfulness in his smile fading into something more serious, more real. "Patricia," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I've made so many mistakes. We both have. But what we're building now, it feels real. It feels like a second chance." Everything they had built together felt real now. It wasn't just a dream, it was happening. Seeing Patricia as an incredible mother, watching their daughter so happy with them, made William realize something profound. He didn't just want to fix what had been broken, he wanted a fresh start, a new chapter with Patricia. Patricia looked at him, startled by his words. She could feel a shift in the air around them, and her heart pounded in her chest. "William, what are you saying?" she asked, her voice unsteady. He took her hand gently, then, with quiet confidence, knelt before her. Patricia gasped, her hands flying to her mouth in disbelief. William gazed up at her, a nervous but genuine smile on his face. "I'm saying that I love you, Patricia. I always have, even when I didn't know how to show it. I want us to move forward, not just as co-parents, but as a real family. Will you marry me again?" From the backyard, Sophia, who had been playing just moments ago, turned her head sharply at the words. Her eyes lit up as she ran toward them, fully grasping the meaning of what she had just heard. "Mommy, Daddy, you're getting married again?" she asked, her excitement bubbling over. Patricia was speechless. Tears welled in her eyes, but they weren't from sadness, they were tears of absolute joy. She looked at her daughter, then back at William. And in that moment, she knew there was only one answer. "Yes," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Then louder, with certainty, "Yes, I accept." Sophia squealed with delight, her face beaming as she threw her arms around both of them, pulling them into a tight hug. "You're getting married again. We're going to be a family," she cheered, her laughter ringing in the air as they held onto each other. The past no longer felt like a weight pulling them down. It was behind them, finally at rest. This was a new beginning, a chance to build something even stronger, with love that had been tested and renewed. William and Patricia were ready to move forward as a family, stronger and more united than ever before. If you enjoyed today's story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments below. See you in the next video.